Jonah was a man who lived a quiet and simple life. He was not a king, and he was not rich, but he knew God and had heard God's voice before. People around him knew that Jonah was a prophet, a man who listened to God and spoke God's words to others. Many days of his life were calm, and he was used to staying among his own people in places that felt safe and familiar to him. Jonah liked peace, and he liked knowing what to expect each day. One day, when Jonah was going about his normal life, something happened that changed everything. God spoke to Jonah clearly, not in confusion and not in noise, but in a way Jonah could not ignore. God told Jonah to stand up, leave his home, and go to a great city called Nineveh. God explained that Nineveh was full of bad actions, cruelty, and evil behavior, and that the cries of suffering from that city had reached heaven. God wanted Jonah to go there and warn the people so they could change their ways before punishment came. As Jonah listened, his heart became heavy. Nineveh was not a small place. It was big, powerful, and dangerous. The people of Nineveh were known for being violent and proud, and Jonah knew they were not friendly to strangers, especially not to someone coming to correct them. Jonah felt fear rising inside him, and his thoughts began to race. He wondered why God would choose him for such a hard task. He also wondered why God would care so much about a people who had done so much wrong. Jonah stood still, but inside him there was a battle. Part of him knew that when God speaks, obedience brings peace. Another part of him felt angry and afraid. Jonah did not understand God's mercy, and he did not like the idea that Nineveh might be forgiven. In his heart, Jonah thought, "Why should these people be warned? Why should they be given another chance?" This thought made him uncomfortable, and instead of trusting God, Jonah began to trust his fear. The more Jonah thought about Nineveh, the more he wanted to run away. He began to believe that if he went far enough, he could escape the mission. He told himself that distance could silence responsibility. This is how many people think, that if they walk away from a problem, the problem will forget them. But truth is, purpose does not disappear just because someone turns their back on it. Jonah made a decision, not with wisdom, but with fear. Instead of preparing to go to Nineveh, he prepared to go in the opposite direction. He packed his things quietly and did not tell anyone about God's command. His heart was already moving away, even before his feet did. A latest saying fits here: when fear leads the way, wisdom stays behind. As Jonah walked toward the harbor, the sound of waves and moving ships filled the air. He saw sailors loading goods, and he felt relief when he found a ship going far away from Nineveh. He paid for a ticket and stepped onto the ship, believing that once the ship sailed, his problem would stay behind on land. Jonah did not know that obedience delayed is still obedience waiting, and disobedience only moves the trouble to another place. The ship began to prepare for its journey, and Jonah went down into the lower part of the ship. He sat there quietly, thinking the hardest part was over. But what Jonah did not know was that this step onto the ship was not an escape. It was the beginning of a much bigger lesson. Because when God's call is ignored, the journey does not become easier, it becomes stormy. And as the ship finally pulled away from the shore and moved deeper into the open sea, Jonah believed he was free, not knowing that the sea ahead was already preparing to speak. As the ship moved farther away from the shore, Jonah felt a strange calm inside him. The land was gone from sight, and the wide sea surrounded the ship on every side. To Jonah, this felt like freedom. He believed that once the land disappeared, the voice of God would also disappear. He sat quietly and later lay down in the lower part of the ship, thinking the hardest part of his life was now behind him. The sailors on the ship were experienced men. They had crossed many seas and faced many storms before. At first, everything seemed normal. The wind pushed the ship forward, and the water moved gently beneath it. But slowly, without warning, the sky began to change. Dark clouds gathered, and the wind grew stronger. The waves started to rise higher and higher, hitting the sides of the ship with great force. Soon, the calm sea became angry. The ship began to shake, and the sailors could feel danger all around them. The wind howled loudly, and the waves crashed like they wanted to break the ship into pieces. Fear entered the hearts of the sailors because they knew this storm was not ordinary. It was strong, sudden, and terrifying. The sailors cried out, each one praying to his own god. They ran back and forth, throwing heavy goods into the sea to make the ship lighter. They did everything they knew how to do, but nothing worked. The storm only became stronger. A saying fits here: when human strength ends, truth begins to speak. While all this fear and chaos filled the ship, Jonah was still below deck. He was asleep. Not a peaceful sleep, but a tired sleep, the kind that comes when someone is running from responsibility. The storm shook the ship so badly that the captain went down to find Jonah. When he saw Jonah sleeping, he was shocked and angry. The captain woke Jonah and said, "How can you sleep at a time like this? Get up and pray to your God. Maybe your God will notice us and save us." Jonah heard the fear in the captain's voice, and slowly the truth he was trying to avoid began to rise inside him. The sailors then decided to cast lots, a way they believed would show who was responsible for the trouble. When they did this, the lot fell on Jonah. All eyes turned toward him. They asked him many questions at once, wanting answers, wanting to live. They asked where he came from, who he was, and what he had done. Jonah could no longer hide. He told them the truth. He said he was a servant of the God who made the sea and the land, and that he was running away from God's command. When the sailors heard this, they were filled with even greater fear, because they realized this storm was not random. It was connected to Jonah's disobedience. The sailors asked Jonah what they should do to calm the sea. Jonah knew the answer, even though it was painful. He told them to throw him into the sea, because the storm was happening because of him. At first, the sailors refused. They tried rowing harder, hoping to reach land, because they did not want Jonah's blood on their hands. But the sea grew even more violent. Finally, seeing no other choice, the sailors prayed to Jonah's God and asked for forgiveness. Then they lifted Jonah and threw him into the raging sea. The moment Jonah hit the water, the storm stopped. The sea became calm again, and silence filled the air. The sailors were amazed and afraid, and they began to respect the power of Jonah's God. Jonah sank into the water. The cold surrounded him, and darkness closed in. He felt himself going down, deeper and deeper, knowing he could not save himself. In that moment, Jonah understood a hard truth. You can run from God's command, but you cannot run from God's presence. As Jonah sank beneath the waves, with no strength left and no way out, something unexpected was already moving beneath the water, something prepared not to destroy him, but to hold him. And just as Jonah's breath was about to leave him, the sea opened, and a great fish swallowed him whole. When the great fish swallowed Jonah, everything changed at once. The cold water, the loud storm, and the open sea were gone. Jonah found himself in complete darkness. There was no light, no fresh air, and no way to move freely. The smell was heavy, and the walls around him felt alive. Jonah was afraid, but this fear was different. This was not the fear of running anymore. This was the fear of being still and having no escape. At first, Jonah thought he was going to die. His body shook, and his heart beat fast. He had never imagined his life would come to this, trapped inside a fish deep in the sea. Time felt strange there. Jonah could not tell if minutes or hours were passing. All he knew was that he was alive, and that surprised him. Slowly, he began to understand that this place, though dark and uncomfortable, was not meant to kill him. In the silence, Jonah's thoughts became loud. He remembered God's voice, clear and firm, telling him to go to Nineveh. He remembered how he had turned away, how his feet had moved faster than his faith. Now, with nothing else to depend on, Jonah faced the truth he had been avoiding. A saying fits here: when you reach the bottom, honesty rises to the top. Jonah began to pray. His prayer was not proud and not polished. It was simple and broken. He told God how afraid he was. He admitted that he had run away. He confessed that he thought he knew better, but now he understood that disobedience only brings pain. In that dark place, Jonah learned something important, that prayer is not about being perfect, but about being honest. As Jonah prayed, he remembered past moments when God had helped him. He realized that even now, God had not abandoned him. If God wanted Jonah dead, the sea would have been enough. The fish was not punishment alone, it was protection. This thought gave Jonah a small peace inside the darkness. He understood that God's mercy sometimes comes in strange forms. Jonah promised God that he would obey. He said that if God saved him, he would go where he was sent and speak the message given to him. His heart slowly changed. He stopped blaming Nineveh and started seeing his own stubbornness. Another latest saying fits here: delay in obedience is still disobedience, but mercy allows another chance. For 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah stayed inside the fish. Each day felt long, but each moment shaped his heart. He learned patience. He learned humility. He learned that running away does not bring peace, but surrender does. In that dark place, Jonah was not just saved from death, he was changed from within. At the right time, when Jonah's heart had truly turned back, God spoke again. This time, God spoke not in anger, but in direction. The great fish moved toward the land. Jonah felt the motion and knew something was happening. Suddenly, the fish opened its mouth and pushed Jonah out onto dry ground. Jonah lay on the land, weak, wet, and exhausted, but alive. He breathed deeply, feeling the air fill his lungs again. The sun touched his skin, and he knew this was a second beginning. God had given him another chance, not because Jonah deserved it, but because mercy does not give up easily. As Jonah slowly stood up, still shaking but alive, he knew there was no more running. The road ahead was clear now. God was about to speak again, and this time Jonah was ready to listen. Jonah stood on the dry ground for a long time after the fish released him. His body was weak and his clothes were dirty, but his heart was awake. The fear that once pushed him to run was now replaced with understanding. Jonah knew he had been given a second chance, and he also knew that second chances are not to be wasted. A latest saying fits here: a second chance is not a repeat, it is a test of change. Then God spoke to Jonah again. The voice was clear, just like before, but this time Jonah did not argue. God told him once more to go to the great city of Nineveh and speak the message he was given. Jonah did not delay, he did not look for another ship, he did not turn his feet the wrong way. He began his journey toward Nineveh with obedience, even though fear still lived quietly in his heart. Nineveh was a very large city. It took many days to walk through it. The people were busy, loud and proud. They lived as if nothing could ever happen to them. When Jonah entered the city, he did not come with fancy words or strong confidence. He came with a simple warning. He told them that their evil ways had been seen, and that if they did not change, destruction would come. At first, Jonah expected anger. He expected laughter or punishment. But something surprising happened. The people listened. Word spread quickly from one street to another. The message reached the leaders, and even the king heard about it. Instead of fighting the message, the king believed it. He stepped down from his throne, wore simple clothes, and called the people to stop doing evil and turn away from their wrong actions. The city changed in a way Jonah did not expect. People who were cruel became gentle. People who cheated began to act honestly. Even the animals were included in the city's time of repentance. Nineveh cried out to God, asking for mercy. This showed that no heart is too hard when it chooses to listen. Another saying fits here: change begins when pride steps down. God saw their repentance. He saw that they were serious, and he chose mercy instead of destruction. The city was spared, lives were saved, a whole city was given hope. This moment showed that God cares not just about warning people, but about saving them. But Jonah did not rejoice. Instead of happiness, anger grew inside him. He felt confused and upset. He did not like that Nineveh was forgiven. Jonah walked out of the city and sat alone, his heart heavy with feelings he did not yet understand. And as Jonah sat there, angry and questioning God's mercy, God prepared another lesson for him, one that would speak not to his ears, but to his heart. Jonah sat outside the city of Nineveh, away from the people and away from the noise. He was alive, he had obeyed God, and the city had changed, yet his heart was still troubled. Instead of feeling happy that so many lives were saved, Jonah felt angry. He crossed his arms and looked toward the city, wishing things had gone the way he expected. Jonah thought God should punish Nineveh, not forgive it. As Jonah sat there, the sun was very hot. The heat beat down on his head, and his body grew tired. Jonah complained in his heart, feeling sorry for himself. He believed life was unfair. He said to himself that obeying God had only brought him stress and discomfort. A saying fits here: when the heart is closed, even miracles feel like problems. God saw Jonah sitting there, full of anger and confusion. God did not shout at Jonah. Instead, God prepared a lesson, just like he had done before. God made a plant grow quickly beside Jonah. The plant was large, and it gave Jonah shade. Jonah felt relief for the first time since leaving the city. He was happy about the plant because it made him comfortable. But the next day, God sent a small worm to eat the plant. The plant dried up and died. Then a hot wind blew and the sun became even stronger. Jonah became very uncalm, the storm only became stronger. A saying fits here: